Hey, what is going on, Rockstars? Today sees the first patch of Operation Health just been dropped, but only for PC. Stick around and we're going to discuss everything that we're going to be seeing in patch 2.2.1. So today, June 7th, we see patch 2.2.1 dropped, but for the PC community only. If you play console, you're going to have to wait until the 20th, and that is assuming that the patch works as intended during the next few weeks of it being on PC. This is the first time we've seen a real departure from the usual method of patch deployment, and as we were told during the Operation Health live stream at the Pro League Finals, this is how it's going to be from now on. Frustratingly, all patches and updates for consoles have to go through Microsoft and Sony first for approval, which can cause long delays between them, and instead the devs have come to the decision that the PC community are going to be the guinea pigs. After players are used as testers on the technical test servers, the patch is going to be released to the PC players, and they're going to be used to test all of the changes implemented up until the patch release on other platforms. This is a bit of a kick in the teeth to any console content creators out there like myself. People like me are going to struggle to get footage and stay on top of the latest changes to the game, whilst the PC players get to play with all of these new features. After the removal of the Xbox Pro League 2, it really does feel like console players are being neglected by the devs, and it's really frustrating. So the patch itself brings with it a whole host of new changes, with the first and probably biggest being the one-step matchmaking. As people will be well aware of by now, the one-step matchmaking is claimed to provide a more stable and faster results when searching for games, as well as allowing players to purchase items from the shop, unlock operators, and undertake all of the normal actions that you would do on the menu while you're searching for a game. This is a nice feature, and one that a lot of people are going to really appreciate, as the long waiting times between games can often be really frustrating. On several occasions, I've warmed up on a few terrorist hunts, gone to jump into a game only to be waiting 15 or 20 minutes before we actually even get to play. This makes the warm-up that I've done completely irrelevant. Another feature on the way is part of the one-step matchmaking, and it's the post-match opt-in out. Now, what that basically means is that at the end of the game, you're going to automatically be returned to the menu unless you choose to remain in the game with your team. You're going to get a pop-up that asks if you want to continue to queue with the current players, so if you had a really good match and your team worked well together, you can choose to stay with them, or back out and find another team. The next biggest change in this patch is the Hitbox rework. If you didn't see my video yesterday, in a nutshell, all of the operators have had a rework to their hitboxes so that baggy clothing, pouches, ear defenders, and other accessories will not be included in the hitboxes for operators. Whilst this is going to be a huge buff to operators like Blitz, you can't help but worry about how tough things might get when you tackle Ash and her already tiny hitbox. As someone mentioned in yesterday's video, it's going to be interesting to see if the hitbox changes were really needed, if the ping issues and hit registration were better, but I guess we're never going to know. As we found out during the Pro League final, and probably much to people's pleasing, glaz is getting a bit of a nerf. As is commonplace in this game, rather than implement a nerf in stages and get a feel for how it's sort of impacting the game, the devs have hit glaz pretty hard. During the Season 4 mid-season reinforcements, that's a mouthful to say, you may remember that glaz's recoil and elastic time, which is how quick it takes for the gun to recenter itself after shooting, was reduced to make him able to chain shots together. This, coupled with an increase in the gun's damage, made him better but not good enough in the devs' eyes. This is why we saw the recent introduction of his new smart scope or thermal scope, whatever you want to call it. This smart scope, coupled with the previous changes, meant that he's been viewed to be too good, and instead his gun effectiveness is going to see an increase to both the recoil and elastic time, as well as a reduction to his damage. They're pretty much undoing everything they did previously. As you can see from these stats here, his gun's damage are going to be lowered by almost half at close range, and then roughly 20 at 15 meters plus. Whilst I don't really agree with this change, it's nice to see that his fall-off damage is maintained a little at range, because as a sniper, he should be better suited to long-range engagements. It seems odd that his rifle's not more effective at range, if anything. He's still going to get out-sniped by Jaeger 9 times out of 10. In another way to nerf glaz, we also see Ash and Thermite smoke grenades being traded for Jackal and Fuse's stun grenades. This is a really interesting move, and the first time that we've seen an operator nerf through altering different operator setups. The devs alluded to the fact that this is because Ash and Thermite are obvious picks, and I think they're hoping to see more Jackal and Fuse pick to assist glaz. I don't really get this, as both Jackal and Fuse's roles don't really pair them with Glaz at all. If Glaz is pushing the tunnel on Clubhouse, for example, and your team have a Jackal and a Fuse, they're mostly going to be redundant in the tunnel. Instead, Fuse is more likely to be seen in the kitchen, for example, so I'm really intrigued by the thought process here. Personally, I and several others felt that the only nerf Glaz was needed was the removal of his smokes. That way he would have to rely more on his team instead. The bonus to implementing such a small change would have been the ability to gauge how effective that change was, rather than 4 changes all at once, but hey, what do I know? Okay, so there is also a pretty large list of fixes to all manner of glitches, bugs, and errors in the game, such as being able to vault onto the roof of the plane as a defender, but the last biggest change, and by far the most controversial, are the changes being implemented to spawn peeking. Now, I don't really spawn peek. I do it maybe once every 15 games, depending on the kind of team that we're up against. If you don't approach the building with caution, it can decimate teams. For many, it can be the most frustrating aspect of this game, especially when you have to sit for the next 3 minutes just giving callouts to your team. It can be made even more frustrating, however, if the instant you spawn, you die. On Chalet by the campfire spawn, on Consulate where defenders can get a line of sight on a spawn by jumping out, and on Canal from the control room, they are going to be adjusting this. Now, the Chalet campfire spawn is going to see an increase to the height of the rocks. This won't really be changing much of the meta anytime soon. However, on Canal, the changes are pretty significant. The devs attempted several fixes involving lowering the crane, placing several objects around the spawn to sort of combat this peak, but it just merely served to funnel the attackers when they left the spawn. They considered moving the spawn behind the building, but it sounds like that's just required too much work, and they want to focus and spend more of their resources fixing the game for Operation Health. Rather than invest a load of devs in moving spawns and making sure everything's set up right in that specific example, they would rather concentrate on hit reg, which I'm not going to complain about. So instead, what they've decided to do is they've decided to completely cover over the window of the control room, which, whilst it does solve the immediate issue, it in turn screws with the meta for the server defense in a big way. Defenders are no longer going to be able to defend against the attackers rappelling up the 2 single windows from behind the control desk, and instead they're going to be forced to risk a lot more by running out of the garage. I find this whole change really odd, as I've never encountered too many issues with this spawn peak, and I rarely see people using it anymore due to how easily it can be countered. Instead, what I have seen is more and more spawn peaks coming from the latest shield trick, in which people get more height and a better angle from the single window of servers. As for the change to Consular, I can hand on heart say I have never ever seen this particular spawn rush used. They're suggesting that as you jump out of the piano window and turn right, you can look straight into a spawn. I genuinely don't see this. I just haven't seen it. I would much rather have seen a change to the spawn that is directly in front of the piano room. Instead of spawning to the left of the broken wall, in which the only way out is into the line of sight of the single window of the piano, if players spawned on the right of that break, there will be more options available to them in terms of which way they go. The patch notes do state that the devs are aware of other spawn kill locations, so it's going to be interesting to see what other changes are on the way, but if they are anything like Canal, unfortunately I think we can expect quite a few unhappy players. What do you guys think of these changes? Are you happy with the hitbox changes? Do you think Glaz may have been nerfed a little bit too much? And if so, what would you have done to nerf him if you were one of the devs? Do you like the changes to spawn peaks, or do you think they're completely uncalled for? Let me know down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that thumbs up and share this with your friends. Let them know everything that's going on. If you don't already, make sure to subscribe, and until next time, stay reckless and relentless.